Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of the Prove Me Wrong podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Pete Lieb. It is a paranormal podcast night tonight. You know, I like to go big on the paranormal nights. And actually, tonight is so potentially disturbing that my normal co-host, Christina, decided she wants to be no part of it. We all have our hot buttons, I guess. Anyone who has listened to the podcast in the past knows that mine is Ouija boards, actually. I don't like them. I don't trust them. I can't be around them. Logical or not, that's my feeling. So for Christina, it's demons, demonic possession, negative energies. She did not want to be part of this discussion tonight with my guest, Jeffrey Seelman. Jeffrey is a professional clearing expert, teacher, author, psychic, and exorcist. Jeffrey clears negative emotional energy as well as negative spirits from individuals, living environments, property, and businesses. He also teaches people how to protect themselves from the effects of negative emotional energies from living people as well as negative or demonic spirits. Jeffrey was born with psychic abilities, and he has dedicated his life to helping those in need. He has written essays and articles on the subject, as well as appearing many times on radio and television, including Strange Universe and the Sci-Fi Channel, where he actually performed a successful exorcism in front of the cameras. You can find more information about Jeffrey and his services at starclear.com. Welcome, Jeffrey, to the Prove Me Wrong podcast.
Thanks, Pete, for having me on the show. Good to be here.
Thank you. Okay, so I've had several psychics on in the past, and my first question is almost always the same, because as far as I can tell, I have absolutely no special sensitivities, none at all. So it always interests me when I talk to people who have these gifts, how did you discover that you had them, and how did they present themselves to you initially?
I was born with psychic abilities and was able to see spirits since the day I was born. And that didn't go over too well with my teachers or my parents when I was growing up. In the early years. I was born in 1959, so you can imagine in 1963, 64, Pete, that it was a little bit problematic. So
right.
I didn't see them all the time. I did not see them everywhere, but I did see them in certain places. One of the places I saw them was in the classroom. Most of the spirits that I did see, and I wasn't sure that they were spirits. I didn't know what spirits were. I grew up in a sort of a religiously dry neighborhood, also very religiously diverse. And so we didn't talk about these kind of things a lot. And of course, we were so young. But I did see spirits once in a while around classmates. And they seemed to be, my guess at the time was helping them with some kind of with their work. The student would be, my classmate would be sitting there in the chair working on an assignment the teacher gave us, and the spirit would be around that student and seemed to be doing something. I figured some kind of communication or something, and very often there was maybe one spirit in the classroom that would be interested in the fact that I could see them, and they would try to frighten me. This is not true of most of the spirits that I saw, who maybe would glance at me occasionally and then go back to what they were doing. We're talking about the classroom here. But sometimes there was one that would be there for nefarious purposes and would try to frighten me and would certainly succeed.
How did they present themselves to you? How were you seeing them?
I saw them as just regular people, all adults, no children, and they were wearing various types of clothing, some very modern for the time, some not so modern, and they seemed to be paying very little attention to me. They looked like normal human beings, except for I could partially see through them. Okay. That was the way that I could tell, which one was which, that a human being or a spirit.
When were you able to actually tell somebody about this? Did you try telling your parents? Who did you confide in?
I told my teachers what was going on, and they really weren't sure what to make of it. My parents, the same thing. My mother was a little bit more understanding, and so that wasn't the only thing that was going on. That I would also tell my mother, grandmother's going to call at 8:23 tomorrow morning. And this is something I would do quite often, and then she would call, or somebody would call. I would say, this person's going to call at 2:05 tomorrow afternoon. And so my mother got kind of used to it. My father wasn't quite as happy or comfortable with that at all, and so that was kind of problematic. Also,
no, go ahead.
Well, it was a combination of things, that me seeing spirits, me telling them, no world big events or anything, Pete. It was just small stuff, people calling the next day, what time they would call. When I was 4 years old, I woke up and there were a couple of aliens in my bedroom. And I wrote about that in my first book. And, it sounds real strange when you say that. It's kind of like you woke up and there were aliens. I was 4 years old. It's 1963. But how I knew they were aliens, besides them not looking like aliens, is they were wearing some kind of maybe uniform, or certainly the same kind of clothing. And also they had some kind of electronic equipment on their chests. Either they were hanging there, or they were it was somehow attached, and it was emitting a light that was more self-illuminating than shining in my eyes. And so at first I thought it was two large eyes looking at me or something. I was just a little kid. So I sat up straight in bed, and I just looked at them, and then one of them kind of crossed over and walked around the side of my bed and just kind of looked at me. And I didn't feel, I was terrified, but I did not feel threatened. And so I got a really good look at them, and eventually ran out of my room and went crying into my mother's room, who really believed me. And later on, she's a very highly intelligent, college-educated woman, and just said, Jeffrey, when I was an adult, she would say, Jeffrey, that was the kind of stuff that would happen to you. It was never a dull day, so I did believe you when you said there were aliens in your bedroom, and of course, when we got back, they were gone.
So was that really the only experience with aliens? Did it continue after that, or was it just that one instance?
When it comes to aliens, Pete, that really is the only physical thing with aliens that really happened to me. But a lot of what I know and how I work has been taught to me by spirits and aliens. And so it's also something I talk about in my book in great detail. So I kind of, and the reason I point to that, and people can get a free copy just by going to my website and downloading it, so it's not about my book, but the idea is that I detail it. And so a lot of weird things have happened to me in my life. Before I got into this work, I've been doing this for about 30 years now, professionally. And a lot has happened since that time and before that time. So it has not been a usual life.
So about what age did you realize that you could kind of control what was going on around you? That you kind of realize that, hey, I can feel these energies and I can do something about it?
I was highly aware of emotional energies in the classroom and places that seemed to me to be a little bit claustrophobic. I went to the same elementary school, meaning grades 1 through 6, for those outside of the United States, that my parents went to. And it was not like an old, broken down building. It was a very beautiful brick building in the suburbs of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. But it also had a long history. And I felt a lot of emotional energy in there. It felt very tight in there and very claustrophobic to me. I was highly uncomfortable. that was something that would kind of stay with me my whole life, meaning that I'd be very sensitive to emotional energies, and eventually acquired the ability to see emotional energies, which is one of the ways that I am able to work and help people.
With regards to the school, I want to ask one more question on the school, real quick. You say you saw spirits in the school. Did the school itself have some type of history where people had passed? Do places need to have people pass from them to be haunted, or is it just that those energies and those spirits can kind of move freely wherever they want, and they may just happen to be, or maybe they're attached to those students that you had in the classroom? What do you think it was that was bringing them there?
None of those, actually. I don't think the school was haunted. I didn't get the sense of anything like that.
Uh-huh.
My feeling was that the spirits were actually trying to help the students with their, say, mathematical problems or whatever on a telepathic level. That was the impression that I got at the time. I still think that would be a correct impression. As far as the negative spirits occasionally that would attack me, I believe that they were probably somehow connected with other people in the classroom. And it was just kind of a fact of life that sometimes that I think most spirits are positive. Spirits meaning people who have passed on and don't have a physical body, and that's all there is to it. I don't think it's any, giant mystery, and I don't think that it related to the building in any way. But those particular spirits were there to help the class, my classmates.
Mm-hmm.
They simply were usually just standing around them or over them, and seemed to be concentrating on the same thing, the same assignment, I should say, that the classmate was. So there was some kind of interaction there to do with I think, the assignment. I think they were just there to maybe help.
Yeah. So when you started, you could feel energies very early on, you said. When did you determine, what was the first time when you realized that you could actually affect these energies?
It was certainly after I got out of the United States Air Force, and I started studying a lot of self-help books for my own reasons,
Mm-hmm.
just trying to better myself, and I got into studying a number of different ancient theories and spirit communication, the history of major religions, things like that. Uh, Around 1989, 1990, I got involved with a group of people that were certainly doing a lot of research on these topics. One of them had asked me, he said he was having a problem in his apartment, and the group, it was a non-religious group, but
Mm-hmm.
just a group of professionals. He was having a problem. He thought there was something in his apartment that was maybe giving him a hard time, harassing him sometimes. Evidently, the group had tried to go over there and do a few things about it and had been unsuccessful. And so they asked me to take a whack at it, only because I had been studying this kind of thing, and to see what I could do. I went over to this guy's apartment, and he was just a professional guy, just a very nice guy, and uh, I got rid of the problem. And I don't remember exactly what I did. It was almost like second nature to me. I didn't perform any particular kind of ritual that time. I seemed to like just kind of throw energy around the apartment, meaning kind of energy out of me, and to see what it would do, and that seemed to do the trick. So I was kind of surprised as well, Pete.
Can you
That would be the first time.
actually see individuals' energy? Like, do people have? I mean, I've heard that people have auras or colors, or some people can actually see another's energy. Are you able to do that?
Yes, because I believe there are two levels to each living sentient being, and that is the physical body and the non-physical body. The non-physical body, also known as the spirit, uh, has an energy field to it. It's just part of the spirit. And so that is visible to me. I wouldn't say that I see every little thing, but I can see a pretty good amount of it. And what happened was that if you're able to see something, and then you apply certain kinds of techniques and energy, and it has an effect upon a person's energy field. Say we're dealing with persons here and not homes or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That I found that I was effective at moving negative energy out of people, and people would feel better when I would do some of these techniques. And so, and I think this energy comes from the other side, what people call heaven or whatever. I'm not anybody special, and I don't claim to be, connected that way.
Mm-hmm.
But what I think is going on is that I naturally, and I think we all do this to a certain extent, naturally bring up energy from the other side in order, which is non-physical in itself, Pete, in order to have a non-physical effect upon other non-physical energies. And emotional energy is a non-physical energy. Most of us have some kind of history of walking into some kind of environment, somebody's apartment, some restaurant or store, or somebody's home, and we just don't like it. We get a
Right,
really
for
weird
sure.
feeling. Yeah. And so I think what they're picking up on is usually emotional energy. Uh, but there also could be a spirit involved. I don't think spirits are any particular great mystery. Like I said, it's just what people fully become when they pass on. So it's just not. I think it's more science than any kind of anything religious or spiritual.
So I mean, I know there are some people who are just completely oblivious. I mean, I've walked into people's houses, to your point, and I have felt just horrible in their place, and they, no big deal. They're just going along about their lives. I'm assuming there are different levels of sensitivity, and some people are potentially maybe just completely closed off, and there's nothing there, and then it's kind of like a spigot. Some of them are completely turned off, some of them have a slow trickle, and then some of them are wide open. Have you found that to be the case in most places?
Well, I think that's true. I think everybody has some psychic ability. I believe that psychic ability is nothing more than perception. I was probably born with some lower filters
Mm-hmm.
than other people, and so this kind of thing was very natural to me. I thought everybody could see spirits when I was really young. I was surprised to hear, that the teachers were not picking up on what I was picking up on, my parents as well, and also that I do believe, talking about this alien thing, that happened to me. 'Cause I had a doctor talk to me a few years ago. It was just my regular, primary care physician, so to speak, not a doctor for the head, but just a doctor for the body.
Right.
And she said to me, she goes, Jeffrey, I told her this story, and she said, Jeffrey, are you sure you weren't sleeping? And I said, I was until they woke me up.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I always thought too that you hear a lot of the stories about seeing spirits or seeing ghosts or what have you from young people, and I was always kind of under the impression as well that I think young people are much more psychic or have much more ability at that age until they're kind of told that that's not real and that's not right and you shouldn't be seeing those things and you shouldn't feel that way, and it kind of gets tamped down to the point where maybe they lock it away or they shut it down, shut it off, and then they kind of quote unquote grow out of it. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that's true. I think that's exactly right. That certainly there's a history of uh, of that happening, where young people naturally talk about being able to see either spirits or energies or things that people don't normally see, and it's very common for parents and the authority figures around us to say, "Hey, that's not happening, or don't pay attention to that and pay attention to physical
Right.
things. And of course, eventually they do. And so that kind of goes into the background. And I think that's probably not a good thing. I think that people can do both.
Hmm.
And that kind of shuts off a part of our natural perceptions, which in how we are connected. Because, as I said earlier in the program, that I believe each of us, and this is not a religious thing, I believe it's completely scientific, that each of us has a non-physical component to ourselves and a physical component, and that physical component lasts as long as our physical body does. And then eventually, of course, we die, and then we fully become a spirit, and which is actually a lot more exciting and fun than they make it out to be.
So, in reading your bio, I talked about you performing a successful exorcism in front of the television camera. Can you recount that situation for me, please? Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I can, because it was something that was filmed for the television, and I've seen thousands of clients in the last 30 years, but this is certainly one I can talk about. This was early on in my career, maybe 1994, 95, somewhere in there,
Hmm.
96, and three young women. They were in their early 20s, all rather attractive. And the reason I'm just saying that is that I think it plays into this, and I'll get into that. And it was not that I thought they were attractive, but I think it played into what happened.
Hmm.
Essentially, I got a call from one of them, and they lived in a condominium together. They were not related. They all were young professional women, and they were complaining about things like waking up with indentations next to their bed,
Ooh.
and also the feeling that something had been holding them when they were sleeping. They also complained about things like when they were taking a shower, that they could see a shadow move behind the shower curtain on the other side, what would be the bathroom
Right.
area. So these kind of things really frightened them, and it was happening to all three of them. And so they had all talked about it. And at that time, I was in the Yellow Pages, and I think they probably found me that way. I'm not quite sure how they got a hold of me, but they did. And I agreed to come out and take care of the problem to the best of my abilities. And so, what is kind of weird, Sightings got a hold of me, which was at that time the only um, psychic phenomenon show on television.
Yeah, I
And so
remember it.
everybody was watching it,
Yeah, I remember.
and so it was really interesting. And they got a hold of me, and they said, we're really interested, Jeffrey, in your work. Do you have anything kind of going on right now? And I said, I do, but all clients are confidential. And I said, I can't, give you the names of the people that I'm going to be helping in the next few days. And they said, well, could you call them and ask them if we could call them or they could call us? And I said, that I could do. And I did. And it turns out, that two of the three women agreed, to have this thing filmed. One of them didn't want to be present for it. The only snag there was, Pete, that uh, Sighting said, look, we'll have our television cameras out from Los Angeles there in 3 days. And the women were so frightened that they ended up saying, we cannot wait. Because we can't even take a shower without this shadow passing,
Right.
and there's
Right.
something, there's essentially saying there is something malevolent in our condominium. We cannot wait 3 days. We'd like to, but we want Jeffrey out here at the appointment time, which was a little bit sooner, like the next day.
Hmm.
And that seemed to only intrigue Sightings a little more, I guess. And then what they did was they put the three women in a hotel room for 3 nights. And then I went out there 3 days later, whenever it was. I think it was on a Saturday. And essentially first did a walkthrough to find out what was going on. And then I did sort of a makeshift ritual. At that time, no clearing is the same. I wasn't exactly sure always what to do. It was like somehow almost second nature to me. It was not like I had been trained right then and there, or by some religion at that time, how to do these things. It was kind of like I was operating almost on a second nature. And so I just simply, I did some kind of ritual, and simply like threw energy at this being that I found in the room. What I had determined that the spirit was simply a voyeur spirit, the kind of spirit that would, look in somebody's window or something like that. And it had been attracted to these three young women, and that's what was going on. Spirits really don't live in people's homes. There really isn't any reason for that, but they sure can come anytime that they like, which is very unfortunate, that they're able to do that. Most spirits are good, but when a negative spirit decides to take an interest in somebody's life, or to try to destroy a family, or in this case, ruin the life of these three young women and scare them into moving to different places and maybe interrupting their jobs and whatever, it's very serious. And so I went in there, and the cameras were rolling. I just asked them if they would stay out of the way. There were a few shots that were, for the cameras, such as me walking up some stairs and things like that. But other than that, they stayed out of my way. I just was very concerned, that they weren't trying to make anything phony or fake or anything. It wasn't that. I just didn't want them in front of me, because I couldn't get a clear shot at a vision of what was happening. And so I always asked them to stay behind me. And that's always been true. And I've been filmed many times doing clearings and exorcisms since. And so I always tell the people filming me, just, stay behind me, whether you get good shots or not good shots, that I don't want you in my field of vision when I'm kind of putting on my fog lights, so to speak, so I can see exactly what is going on, see these spirits. Usually there is just one. And in this case, also, there was just one. So I did this clearing. It just seemed to be kind of off the top of my head, although I was very serious about it, and I could see the spirit very clearly. It didn't seem to offer much of a fight. I don't think it expected me to be able to see it, much less do anything about it, but I did. You can't kill a spirit, they're already dead, but you can certainly banish them and push them out of the premises of the home, living area, a person's energy fields, whatever.
Right.
That's what I did, and the problem never came back. That I first heard that from sightings. The sightings had contacted the three women, and then the three. One of the girls had called me up, and young women had called me up, and they said, it has never come back, Jeffrey. It's gone. And after you came and did that, the condominium is clear. And so, and sightings said that as well. And so after that, followed some more national television shows, and also a lot of morning shows, some local, some not, where I would either be in the studio, go on the telephone. The internet was not around yet. And so it was just beginning, just a shadow of it was coming in at a very slow speed, at 97 or so, 4.5 kilobytes per second, as you remember.
Right.
And yeah, I used to work for an internet company. So, and so I did a lot of morning shows. They'd invite me into the studio, and it was kind of interesting because at first, because I was not well known at all, I was met with a lot of snickers and laughter by the DJs, and it was pretty uncomfortable for me. But what I thought was this: I really felt that I had a lot of information to share. It seemed to just come from somewhere deep inside of me, and so I would answer the DJ's question really quickly, which is usually some kind of unfortunately stupid question.
Mm-hmm.
Which is meant to elicit maybe some laughter from the audience. But what I would do is I would answer the question very quickly and then speak directly to the audience that I was out there, maybe 10, 20,000 people at work, driving to work and for these morning shows, and being at work and listening to these shows. And I would explain to them exactly how I felt this was all working and happening. And what happened was that it kind of backfired on the DJs, because the boards would light up with really intelligent questions from the listening audience, as opposed to, why is this guy on your show? Or this guy's crazy or something like that. The exact opposite was really happening. It was like, well, you know what? Jeffrey's making some sense. So he's saying that, this is just a natural phenomenon, and it's not something we have to be frightened of, but it's something that we certainly can do something about. And also that it turns out that just about everybody has some kind of story to tell about something unusual that's happened in their lives.
Well, just to go back for just a moment. When you were talking about the creeper, the voyeur, were you able to actually see him there, or was it more of I felt the presence and this is the impression that I'm getting?
I felt presence everywhere in the condominium, but I saw the spirit very clearly. And so that's how I knew where he was.
Yeah.
And I sort of kind of put him in this sort of a bit of a trap energetically. And then I fired a lot of energy at him. I wasn't really quite sure exactly what to do, but the information seemed to come to me naturally at that time. This is early on in my career. I learned a lot later on in a different methods and sources we talk about, but I wasn't quite sure at that time what to do, so I kind of just winged it. And but I did see the spirit quite clearly, and it was kind of a short, balding, older man. That is how the spirit appeared to me, and I was quite sure that he was harassing these women for his own weird sexual fantasies, and spying on them, and disrupting their lives and scaring them. And so I attacked them essentially.
Well, weird people in life are weird people in death. I don't know that I believe that they don't change, right? You are who you are living is probably who you are dying after the fact. So that guy was probably that guy alive, and he was just kind of keeping on his practices after he'd passed. I also have
that's exactly what I think is going on. Yes, that's exactly what I think was happening.
And also with you were talking about the DJs and the morning shows. The internet, that to me is a huge benefit for what you do, for really anything what you would quote unquote alternative belief systems or things like that, because it used to be you would be kind of sequestered. You have small little tribes of people, located here and there and everywhere, who may believe these things, but they couldn't connect. Now you're able to, I can put something on Facebook or on, some other internet platform, chat room, and I am connected around the world with people who've had similar situations, similar experiences, and they believe me. And so now I have a community of people who believe me rather than a couple of people who haven't seen what I've seen, who are just snickering at me, trying to make me look like a fool. So, I think it's probably has to have gotten much easier for you since the internet age has come along. Yeah?
It's true, but also, Pete, a lot of things have happened to me during that time, an awful lot of things. And in 1997 or so, I was approached by a group of spirits. I was not looking for this. I was actually just walking down by the shores of Lake Michigan, taking a walk. And they had asked me if I wanted to join a group of higher spirits, me not being one of them, not being a higher spirit, but would I care to join this group that essentially was doing that kind of work, going around and protecting people, not only individually but en masse from negative spirits and just negative anything. And so they said, think about it for about 3 days. I'm paraphrasing here,
Mm-hmm.
but think about it for 3 days, and then we'll get back to you. And just know that a couple of things. Know that it's kind of a lifelong project. So if you want to work with us, we want you to kind of dedicate your life to it. You can certainly have other jobs and everything, but I mean, it's just this is something I felt they were talking about for my own protection. Once I got really too deep into this stuff, there was just no way of getting out. And also, one of the things they said to me that was very interesting was that there would be no rewards for my work. They didn't say that I couldn't charge a small amount of money so I could live,
Right.
but what they were saying was that when you pass on, that you're not going to get a desk job in heaven if that's what you're looking for. We can't offer you anything. You've got to do this out of the goodness of your own heart. And I did think about it. I did not answer them immediately, Pete. I decided to take those 3 days and think about it, which I did. 3 days later, the same spirit appeared, whom I've never seen before. And I said I would do it. I felt that because I had these natural talents, that if I could be of service to my fellow human being in some way, that it'd be worth it, because my life had been pretty strange anyway. And most of the things that I encountered, were positive, not negative. So my life was not full of negative things. Having some psychic ability actually really helped me in a lot of ways later on in high school, and also in the Air Force, and so in ways they'll never know.
Sure.
I mean, as far as it was I used my abilities basically to stay out of trouble. So I never got caught doing anything. Now, I didn't do anything really serious, just so your
just so we're
listeners and
clear.
viewers
Yeah.
know, Pete. Yeah, we're just talking about, I knew when the teachers were coming.
Mm-hmm.
I knew when the police were coming. And so, and I wasn't stealing anything or anything like that, but I mean that I knew when trouble was coming. I think maybe your listeners and viewers could understand that.
Sure.
Call it intuition, was very, very strong in me, and people would actually bring me out during high school. They'd bring me outside to say they were smoking outside or something like that. This is back in the 70s, and they'd actually bring me outside, and because I would be able to give them a 30-second warning that a teacher was going to appear at the door and say, "Hey, what are you kids doing?" Of course, they knew what we were doing, and sometimes I was a part of that. But I always was able to give them a warning, and hence we never got caught. So I looked at this whole thing in a positive way. I think what happened when the internet came along was I was always very much interested in technology. I built my first security system through a kit when I was 8 years old, for my own evil purposes.
Yeah.
The whole thing was about my mother and my father not catching me watching the Tonight Show late at night, and so I had this whole thing rigged up where I could essentially flip a switch. It was not remote controls back then had wires on them. They were not completely remote.
Right.
And so I had it set up where if they came out of their bedroom, that I could turn off the television. So essentially that I've always been very technologically inclined. And so I built my first website when the internet came out, and I was working for a telecommunications company at the time. And right after that, I went in to work for an internet company when that was beginning to really take hold around our world. And so I built my own website, and I remember, just saying, well, I had this card on it with my website and email address, and I remember people going, "What is that?" Well, that's my website. And what is
What's
that?
a website?
That's my
Yeah.
email address. And I said, well, we're not getting any email. That's not going to happen. And I thought, yes, it is. I just knew the value of it because, and just really quickly, I could,
Sure.
being involved in the business that essentially, and also at home, uh, when I would look at something, I was creating my own website. So I had, say it was called StarClear. I had an original name for a few years, and I changed it when Caller ID came out because of the size of the name. But and so uh, that I built this one-page website, and I said, "Wow, I have a picture on there, the name of my business, my telephone number, and my email address, and a little bit of information about me." And the first thing I thought of was that, well, restaurants could use this.
Yeah.
They could actually post their menu online, and then people could call up and say, "I want number 21, the chicken and rice." And so I immediately saw that the internet was going to be huge,
For sure.
regardless what anybody said. I said, well, this is technology that's going to be successful. And I did, you're right, I did use the internet very strongly back when a lot of people were not. And I did use it to communicate also with a lot of media people around the country. And they were very interested in what I was doing because I approach all of this from a scientific perspective. I don't belong to any religion, and I do not belong to any spiritual group, and I never have. And so I'm not saying I don't believe in God and I don't believe in angels and things, because I really do. I just think that it's all really natural. I'm not saying that, the concept of God is this some weird energy or something like that. I don't believe that, but I think that it's still a natural process that people go through, transfer from this world to the other one, and that we're always connected with the other world. Just and One of the things that happened when I said yes to this group, it turns out, I just felt that they were very, very good. The only reason I even got involved with these higher spirits was that I could feel them. And I
Hmm.
could feel that they were really interested in helping other people. It wasn't just like something they told me and that I believed. I could feel their energies, and their energies were that of freedom itself. And I remember thinking that when I first encountered them, and I said I really wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to do something really good for my fellow human being. And then that's pretty much how I got into that. And I did a lot of radio shows, and sometimes I contacted them, and sometimes they contacted me, and television shows also. And then eventually, I started doing, like, say, coast to coast
Hmm.
radio shows. I just got finished last month doing my sixth appearance on Coast to Coast with George Norrie.
So now we're quite a bit down the road now. Now we're 30 years down the road from when you started. How does it work now? How do you do these clears now? Are you still going on site? How do you, if somebody contacts you and says, you're in Milwaukee, I'm in California, how are you handling those jobs?
While I was doing clearings I'll say it as fast as I can. While I was
Sure.
doing clearings before the internet came out, I was actually being taught while I was doing it by different kinds of spirits and aliens. And I knew they were aliens because they looked so different and they felt so different. And I could see them very clearly. I think they were just astral traveling, that they might have been passed on as possible, but they certainly would teach me right then and there how to clear people. And so that was going on. And then, so I was doing actually clearings for different wellness centers
Hmm.
and different crystal shops. I would work in the back room where they had a massage table set up, and I had a pretty good clientele going. What happened really, really was that I started doing really large television and radio shows, and they reached people all over the world. And suddenly I received emails. Now the internet is going. It's about 2005, 2006. It's going full blast. And I realized that uh, almost all of these people were out of state. how can I help them? I thought, what do I do? Well, I simply used some logic. I realized that when I went into a home or a business to do a clearing or an exorcism, whatever it took, a clearing meaning just getting rid of the negative emotional energy from the past, an exorcism meaning there's a spirit, a negative spirit involved, or a demonic spirit, which are two different kinds of spirits. And so essentially, I realized, I said, what do I do? How do I help these people? There must be a way. I was getting hundreds of emails. And I thought to myself, well, I'm not really touching anything when I go into a person's business or somebody's home. I don't open up their drawers or anything. I ask them sometimes if I can open up a closet or a room. I'm very polite about what I do. When I'm in somebody else's home, I'm pretty polite. We have to be, and so what I did was I applied that to the idea that how could I work remotely? I didn't have a clue. I wasn't sure what to do, so I thought, okay, I could do this by taking a picture. If somebody would send me a picture of their home or themselves, and then I would talk to them on the telephone or through the internet in some mode. We have a lot of different ways of talking through the internet as well. And if I could do that, then I could do this. It was just a matter of focusing, because I knew inherently, Pete, that on the other side, which is the side that I'm working on, the non-physical side, that there's no such thing as distance. That's a physical unit of measurement, distance, distance. And also that it didn't really matter how far people were away from me. And so I decided to give it a try. I said, look, I think I can help you. Send me a picture. And I think Skype was going at the time. I was one of the early people involved with Skype. So early that they grandfathered me in to the yellow pages, because I was just around I had everything, Pete, as soon as they had it out.
Yeah.
And it was really about my business. It was about different ways to communicate with people. And so I was really big on that. I always have been. And so essentially that I thought, well, okay, if I take a look at a picture of a home and I talk to the people on the telephone or through the internet and they say, well, this is what we think is going on. And I take a look at this picture and I apply a very large amount of energy in the direction of this home or the direction of this person. I would do this. I would have the person do the same thing I'd have them do in person when I was working with people. I'd have them lie down for about 45 minutes with their eyes closed. And I was working on them in person. I would sit behind them and then kind of throw this energy through them in order to help clear their energy fields. It's not how I did an exorcism, but it's how I did a clearing, which is the greater portion of my work anyway. So I applied that in the same way. I would take a picture, that they sent me, usually through the email, and eventually through text and telephones as well and things like that, and then apply these energies that were taught to me by these higher spirits that they were teaching me at the time how to do these things. I applied these philosophies to actually make these things happen. So I would actually throw a huge amount of energy, all from the other side, not my energy, but I would bring it through me at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now not so much, but before. And I would bring it through me, up through me, and then down into the property. I'd say, okay, that property, it doesn't matter how far away it is. I'm looking at it right here and now. And so I did it that way. And at that time, Pete, I think this would be about 2006, I was batting about maybe 65%.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was some failure. And because I was just starting out, I wasn't sure of my own techniques and what was being taught me. That since has changed to more of a 99.5% or more, and is practice. Doing it for so long, because that was 2005, 2006, 2007, and now we're in 2020, and I've done thousands of clients and thousands of homes and businesses, and so it took a long time of putting these principles and practices together and understanding that each home has its own unique vibrational content and each person has their own unique vibrational signature, much like our physical DNA. And that's kind of how I operate. It really is very scientific.
So let me ask you then, the last 10 minutes or so we have, I want to talk pretty strictly about exorcisms. So what is the accepted logic? Let me just start here with the basics. What's the accepted logic around possession? What do demons want to possess? What is the goal?
The goal of a demonic spirit, which could be said to be the counterpart of an angelic spirit, because they're very powerful and very old, and they're not the average people who are just dying. Their goal is to destroy your life or anybody else's life. They want to affect people in a negative way. There isn't always a reason for it. I don't think that there is some kind of war going on. I think that they just like to make trouble for other people. And what they do is they amplify our angers towards each other and our fears, and that can have a terrific effect a horrible effect upon people. Like, say that a couple is arguing. That is when maybe a demonic spirit might make itself known. And of course, sometimes couples will argue quite frequently. A negative spirit, a demonic spirit, comes around and amplifies like a lightning rod our angers and gets one of these people to do something that they would not normally do, such as an act of violence. So that really is the goal. I'm not trying to say that everything that happens in the world is due to negative spirits. I think, though, that there is an influence, and these things are happening, though, and they are around, and they do attack people in power, and they do attack people with no power, essentially, that their goal very often is just to wreak havoc in a person's life and also to destroy businesses and families, the fabric of the family as well.
So they're not necessarily in it to destroy the person they're inhabiting. They're in it to hopefully affect and negatively affect those around that host.
I think they're trying to get as many people as possible. So if they can get one person to hurt many people, so be it. But one of the things I find that's most common is that a demonic spirit will attack, say, a family that's having emotional troubles, arguments, things like that, in order to destroy the fabric of the family and maybe to get to have somebody go over the limit and hurt somebody. What they do is they throw out a huge amount of rage, and we pick that up thinking that that's our own. It's kind of like a road rage type situation, Pete, like a lightning rod effect. It sort of activates all of the anger inside of us and throws us over the edge. That is their goal. And they usually operate alone. I really think the reason they operate alone is I really think that these particular spirits, whether they're just people who are dead or demonic spirits, are really just kind of like criminals. And they don't really get along with each other very well and tend to operate alone for egotistical reasons.
And so where do these requests come from? Are they coming from the actual person themselves, or are they coming from family members who have noticed a change in the demeanor of the person?
It's a good question, Pete. Most of the people who call me up and say they're possessed, they are not, because first thing I say to them is, if you were fully possessed, I'm the last person you would call.
Right?
I'm an exorcist, right? And so what happens is usually it's a family that calls me and explains to me what is going on. And there's different levels of possession. When a person is fully possessed, there are things I can do given the choice. Usually those people are already, the authority figures, maybe the police or psychiatrists, whatever, have already gotten a hold of them, which is very understandable. But very often what they do is they strike from a distance, meaning that they'll hit on an emotional level and then back away. One of the most common forms of possession is temporary possession. That can happen when a person does too much alcohol or drugs and temporarily blacks out. They step out and something else steps in. So there are different kinds of possession.
When you're doing your pre-screening, How do you screen for true possession versus maybe some undiagnosed mental illness?
It's a good question. I question that person very much, and to see, does this make any sense? What is the reason they think they're possessed? What kind of things are happening in their life? What's going on in their home?
Mm-hmm.
This kind of thing. And so, what I come across most often is not so much that they are completely under the control of a negative spirit or a demonic spirit, but that they are being attacked by a demonic spirit in order to get them to accomplish something that the spirit wants them to do, something negative, either to themselves or to somebody that they love or to people that they don't love. So I don't really come into contact that often with people who are fully possessed, because usually when they get that far, they're already locked up in a psychiatric ward. The family's already done something about it. They're already on quite a bit of medication. These are people I normally can't get to. What I can get to are people who are being attacked by demonic spirits, and in order to separate and banish the demonic spirit from that person's energy fields that are hooked in together on an emotional level.
It's so hard to determine, because to your point, you said a lot of those ones that are truly, fully, potentially possessed, they're in a home, they're on Thorazine, they're on some kind of incredible psychotic drug, and it's so hard to draw that line as to determine. And that's why I asked the question was, what is true possession? What is mental illness? And that it's such a gray line. It's so hard to determine. I was really interested to see kind of how you determined it. And how do you know, how do you perform the exorcism when you determine one is necessary? Do you have to be on site for that? Is that not something you can do remotely?
Oh, no, it's something I can do remotely. What I do is I've learned how to take energy from the other side in huge amounts and shape it into different tools like swords and shields and other things that have a known effect upon negative emotional energy and negative spirits. And so I can affect them and I can banish them from a distance. It's a process that usually takes a number of days. It's not something I do in half an hour or something like that. I guess one of the things that I find that is most common that your listeners might find interesting is that very often the attacks are not just on individuals, but are on families or on businesses, and so the idea is to destroy as many people as possible, not just to attack one person, because, like I said, if a spirit is fully in control of that person, they're not going to call me. So usually
Right.
when I get phone calls from people that it's not been going on for a real long time, and more than one member of the household is experiencing some horrible feelings in the home. Maybe things are actually moving around a little bit. Certainly cars are not being flipped over or anything like that. It's not like a Hollywood movie. But spirits are, when they're very powerful, sometimes can move small things, knock things off of walls, and things like that to make their presence known and make people feel weak and ineffective and not know what to do. Very often they've called an exorcist from their religion. And of course, maybe they go in there and throw some holy water around and run,
Right.
not to cut down anybody's religion or holy water. These are powerful things. But it helps, if you're an exorcist, it helps also to have psychic ability.
Well, how do you know when you're successful? How do you know when the demon has? Because if I was a demon, if I was trying to inhabit something and you came and you were fighting me on it, I would lie to you. Why not lie? Act as if I was gone and then come back when you're gone. How do you know when you've accomplished it?
I attack them as mercilessly as they attack people. And so there are ways to diminish their power to the point where they find it of no use and no value to attack that person and more likely that family anymore. how I really know that things are gone is when I keep in contact with that family, uh, or, or person, or business or whatever, and they tell me that there's been no activity, over a period of weeks or months.
So you offer some courses on your website to teach individuals how to protect themselves. Kind of without maybe giving away the farm. Can you expand on that at a high level?
Yeah, and it's no secret. Essentially, it's something that I put together along with my own spirit guides, these very same spirits I talked about, that we put together some very powerful techniques that anyone can do that are very scientific, essentially creating a multi-layered shield system so that any kind of negative emotional energy that's sent your way, even subconsciously by coworkers. It's not always about attacks.
Right.
It's about defending ourselves against negative emotional energy from other people that don't even know they're sending it. They just might be, having a bad day, or they're just kind of being negative or whatever. Or environments that we come into contact with, or that we work in, or spirits that are trying to get us to do things that we would not normally do. These protection systems can be brought up in 5 or 10 seconds. When I used to study protection systems and read books on them in the 1980s, one of the things I came across is that they wanted us to do things. The people who write these very well-meaning people and knowledgeable people, 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the evening. I realized in the 21st century that nobody would have 10 minutes anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We're just too busy. Our world has become too busy. And so I designed techniques with the help of my spirit guides that could be brought up in 5 or 10 seconds throughout the day. Not something that you would do 10 minutes in the morning that would wear off, or 10 minutes in the evening that would wear off and whatever, but something you could do on a moment's notice when you were feeling that there was something negative around you, including just a negative person at work. It would not harm anybody, and you're not attacking anybody. You're simply bouncing the energy back to the source naturally. And that kind of stops the attack in itself. It's kind of like two laser beams meeting in the center. It simply stops the emotional energy from hitting your body's energy fields and making you feel negative.
Mm-hmm.
That's what one of the major goals of things that I teach is to stop negative emotional energy from reaching into your energy fields, our energy fields, and affecting us in a negative way.
So my last question then tonight is, what are any final thoughts you would like to leave for those out there who may be suffering through something like this and they don't know what to do right now?
Well, there certainly is help. You can reach me at starclear.com and talk to me about it. I don't charge for consultations. I'm happy to explain how I work and what I do, and see if there's anything I can do to help any person listening out there. And also that, yes, most spirits are good. 85% of all the people who are dead out there that are considered to be spirits are good and would never do anything negative.
Exactly.
And also that, same with demonic spirits. There's far less of them, but they are out there. Is what really is a danger is that people are not nice to each other. Some people are, and some people are not. So the real danger that I see going on right now in the world is how we treat each other. And that also plays into the kind of work that I do, which is teaching people how to protect themselves, and keeping their body's energy fields really strong, because there's a lot of unhappiness and hatred out there, and I think more than ever. And we need to also be careful of each other and really be nice to each other.
And you feel that in those moments of weakness, that's when you are potentially ripe for maybe something like a demonic presence to start attacking you more often?
I think the more it's true, but the more dangerous thing out there is being affected by other people, not demonic spirits and or just negative spirits who are dead, but also, if somebody would like call you a name, a derogatory name, that would, like activate all of the anger inside of you and get you to do something that you would later regret. This is the area that I work in as well, is teaching people how to strengthen their energy fields so they're not affected so much by these things as long as they're going on. how to protect oneself from people as well as spirits.
Yeah, we call those people energy vampires, right? Those people at work.
Yeah,
They
to a
walk
certain
in and
extent, but
just suck your energy right out of you. Just take the life right out of you. I guarantee everybody who's listening knows somebody like that. They walk in the room and it just sucks you dry almost immediately.
yeah, and also very aggressive people
Yes.
who are angry and prejudiced against people, maybe for different color skins or different religions
Mhm.
or different sexuality and all the different things that we have here on the planet Earth. And that's happening right now. And so I think we need to protect ourselves from other people as well as spirits.
Well, thanks, Jeffrey, for joining the show tonight and sharing your experiences. I really appreciate it. I know I kind of asked you a little bit there. I know public appearances kind of are out of the realm of possibility right now. But do you have a book or anything else that you'd like to plug?
I'm just finishing up my second book. It's been delayed just a little bit because our current city is under a lockdown
Right. Yeah.
because of the crisis. We're not really allowed to go anywhere practically. But I do have my first book, which I created in Chicago. It's an audiobook in 2013, and it's got a lot of useful information, including some techniques that anybody can practice that are scientific, they're non-religious, and you can get it off of my website. Yes, it's on Amazon and Amazon UK, but you can also get a free copy by just going to my website. It's available to everybody. I did not create this book to make money. I created it to help people. So on the front page of my website, starclear.com, it very clearly says, this is my book here, and also all of my lessons, or most of them anyway, and you can just download them and keep them, and they're yours.
Great. Well, once again, everybody, that's Mr. Jeffrey Seelman, starclear.com. You can get his book. You can get his strategies to protect yourself. And you can also contact him if you feel like you need his services. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. I really appreciate it. And hope to talk to you again. Hope you stay healthy.
Pete, thanks so much for having me on the show and great questions.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Good evening.
All right, everybody. So that was Jeffrey Seelman. He is a psychic exorcist, and has kind of learned over time and with practice to be able to kind of focus his energy and be able to affect those negative energies in other places with his own. I was interested to kind of get his take on demonic presence. His way of exorcism is definitely different than some. You have this impression of exorcism as being very physical, and to his point, the priest coming in, the power of Christ compels you. The power of Christ compels you. It doesn't have to always be that way. I think that there may be other options for you out there if you don't want to get more, that physical, hands-on approach. Maybe there is a psychic way of doing it. It's an interesting thought. I don't know. I've never, knock on wood, never had to have an exorcism. Lucky for me. But I do think, to me, it makes sense. If you have these psychic abilities, which maybe the priest down the street does not have, that there could be more than one way to accomplish the goal there. What are your thoughts? I don't know. If you have any questions or concerns or comments, you can send them to us. You can send them to us through our provemewrongcast@gmail.com. That's our email address. If you want to contact us, you can also drop a line through Facebook or Instagram. Just Prove Me Wrong is the name of the program. You can, if you just want to find the podcast itself, you can find us on Stitcher, Spotify, Tunein Radio, iTunes, SoundCloud, really any podcast platform that you utilize. You can find the Prove Me Wrong podcast. Like and subscribe to the program, and you will be notified when a brand new episode comes out. We release them once a week. Also, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, as you can see right here with this scroll at the bottom of the screen. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, and you will once again be the first notified of any brand new episodes that come out, and you can be the first to listen to them. Our sponsors tonight, Javaremix. It's the perfect blend of 100% organic Arabica coffee infused with nano-emulsified CBD. Javaremix offers traditional ground coffee as well as single-serve K-Cups in both regular and decaf. If you're not a coffee person, Javaremix also offers CBD-infused teas and even beauty products like bath bombs and body scrubs. And as an added benefit right now for Prove Me Wrong listeners, you can go online, that's javaremix.com, and enter the promo code Prove Me Wrong for a 20% discount off of your entire shopping experience. And Javaremix also offers free shipping for all orders over $40. So you really have no reason not to give it a shot. So once again, that's Javaremix, promo code Prove Me Wrong. The Prove Me Wrong podcast is also brought to you tonight by ZendoZones citronella burners from JT Eaton. They are shaped like fearless little tiki gods. So let Surf and Stan, Hawaiian Howie, and Luau Lily bring the islands to your backyard with ZendoZones citronella burners. ZendoZones uses natural 3% citronella candles and incense cones. They're perfect for patios, decks, backyards, campsites, poolside, and more. You can enjoy the outdoors again. They are available now on Amazon and at select Ace Hardware stores, so collect them all today. So once again, from my guest, Jeffrey Seelman, starclear.com is his website. I'm Pete Lieb. This is the Prove Me Wrong podcast, and we'll see you again soon.